Welcome to Money Convos, where we discuss personal finance and investment tips. We're committed to helping people create wealth and achieve financial freedom. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast. All right then, let's head into today's conversation.
Courage, how are you doing?
My brother, I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Great, man. Great. How is that going in Ghana? How is the economy looking like these days?
Charlie, the city is dancing up and down. It's generally the hard stuff, really. Cost of living is becoming unbearable. Investors are running out of options on what to do. Banks are posting losses. Things like that,
I see. I see the city has moved around. Okay. I guess I haven't checked in a week. It's now on Google, it's now around 11.85. A week ago, it was 10.9, 10.8.
It reversed some of the gains. I guess it's the normal market dynamics, really. So nothing alarming yet, but it's been that up-down movement so far this year. So with the inside, it's way better than what we saw last year. So yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
All right.
With a few banks that have posted results so far, they are showing losses. Yeah. So GDP is biting mostly.
These are Ghana Stock Exchange listed banks.
Well, there was what was the name? This one that merged with Ghana Home Loans or acquired Ghana Home Loans.
First National.
Is it First National? No, I've forgotten the name. So it will come back.
FNB.
No, this okay. Well, maybe this Trinidad Bank, that and Tobago Bank. What's the name, sir?
So that's HFC became Republic.
I think Republic Bank.
Republic Bank.
Yeah, Republic Bank. They have posted losses. I think there was Societe Generale, but that was unaudited. Yeah, so you can't speak so much of it. We hear a number of others are also about churning out losses, really. And if you saw the Q3 numbers for some of these institutions and where they ended the year, you can clearly point to the DDP and its accounting treatment, the impairment thereof, and what impact it would have had on their profitability. So, but it's not all gloomy, actually. I think it's just an accounting treatment at this point. It is when the government is unable to come through on its obligation going forward, maybe even with the new debts, the new bonds and all of that, and they miss maybe one or two coupon payments, then these impairments kind of crystallize. But as it stands now, if government comes good within the next two coupon payments, I guess then I think February next year, they can actually reinstate some of those write-offs now, and the banks will be better off for it, really. So it's not like a gloomy story. I think it is just what IFRS 9 requires, that it should requires to be done. That is the issue. And so once the rules, are met and government comes good on that debt or its debt to them, they should be able to write back those impairments and be good to go.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's good. For some light at the end of that tunnel. Okay, so let's talk about this week's issue. We've been hearing some news, and in fact, I know there's one hot topic going on around. Serum alerted us, but I didn't catch on to it early. So hopefully very soon we'll have that conversation. I'm sure people are thinking about Hakimi style, but maybe next week or another time we'll have that conversation to discuss it. But for now, we are hearing some memos on the streets on the online streets and in the news media that BRICS, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, are trying to talk about it in a currency that will rival the US dollar as a major trading currency. So we are going to get into that. And for us as Ghanaians, we are most concerned about how it will affect us, how it will affect our currency, the volatility, what's going to happen to cost of living, prices of goods and services, and all that. So we'll get into all that in a moment. So step by step, let's start. So, Courage, first, what is BRICS? Of course, we know the countries, but why is this group relevant? We know about China, but
Okay, so
so I'm sure some people are just wondering, but like as a collective, especially including South Africa, we didn't think an African country could be this powerful. So tell us why the collective matters.
well, yeah, so there are a number of blocks, economic blocks really, and country groupings. There is the G7, the G20, and then the likes. I think G7 is just a collection of some very powerful nations: Canada, France, I think Germany, the US, the UK, Japan, and now the European Union. I mean, those are powerful nations. They command, I think, for the average over the last decade, they command about 25% of the world's GDP and have about almost 1 billion of the world's population, really. And they are really influential. And so I guess the idea of the BRICS came about, it started a bit earlier, but properly the form we know it now started from 2009. But I think it dates back to 2006-07 thereabout when it was meted. So that is just, and the term BRIC is actually a product of someone's imagination, a JP Morgan analyst who actually just developed that acronym to describe them. But it started as a collection of powerful developing nations who wants to put their assets together and try to see how they can advance their common cause, really. So yes, big as China is, it's still a developing nation. Big as India is, it's still a developing nation. Same for Brazil and the likes, really. So it started as BRIC: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And then I think in 2010, South Africa was added, and now they are now BRICS. So really, it's a collection of developing nations, and you can see these are developing nations across, I think, 3 or 4 different continents. I think 3 different continents. Brazil from South America, Russia from Europe, India, and then I think China from Asia, really, and then.
Okay, Prince, back to you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, so for me, I think it's not a bad deal, because I think over a period of time now, we've made the US dollar have really dominated world trade, and based on that, it's actually become a standard for trade for a long period of time, and it's really weakening other countries' currency, if I should say. So for me, I think BRICS coming on board to trade in one currency will really bring a lot of improvement into the world of economics. And I feel these countries are also, part of the top 10 countries when it comes to GDP and when it comes to international trade. So for me, I think it's a good move, that can help both countries stabilize its currency as a form of trade in the purchase of goods and services. So for me, it's a good thing, and I pray that it comes to fruition where we will have one currency being used for international trade, so that all these exchange rates, one country's currency dominating the world, I mean, becomes a thing of the past. Yeah. So for me, I think it's a good move.
Okay, so Prince thinks it's a good move. All right, we'll hear from other people too if anyone has any thoughts while we try to sort out Courage's technical challenge. Courage, again, if you can hear me, I suggest you get out of the space, close Twitter, and then open it again and try to get in. Okay. So, Prince, have you heard about this group called BRICS before? I did my undergrad thesis on the issue of BRICS and whether Ghana is qualifies to be a member of the BRICS or not. But besides, yeah, but that was my first time hearing about it. But have you come across it?
I've come across, but really the attention was not much on it as at the time. I think once a while, it pops up, and I hear about it, but I didn't really give it attention, and I really didn't see it becoming much dominating recent talks lately. Yeah. So for me, I think when I heard about it, I was like, wow. Then it seems these people are really up to something. They really want to make this thing happen. And I mean, just like we see countries and continents do over a period of time, where some people come together and form a body to channel a certain cause. I think this one too is the way it's going, and I think for some time now, it's really been dominating CNN for discussion. So I think it's something that I think they mean business, and we are looking forward to it coming to power, because I feel and in our case, I mean, being in Ghana and purchasing with a dollar really, it's really also bring a whole lot of issues with regards to increasing prices for goods and services. So for me, I think it's a good thing. Yeah, I pray that it comes to light, and then we also see where Ghana we stand, either to also join, or whatever be the situation, we can benefit from it. I know joining there to be some way, but I think one way or the other, there can be something that we can also benefit from if since we have one African country joining them. Yeah.
Okay, that's an interesting perspective. All right, I think we've got Courage back. Thank you, Prince, for holding the fort. Courage, do we have you?
Yes, I'm here. I don't know what was happening, but it kept going on and off.
You know, in this day and age where spies are infiltrating top secret information, maybe since we are starting to talk about the stability of the US dollar, maybe some CIA or somebody is doing something to the internet to prevent the information from going out. Anyway, all right. Let's move on with the discussion. So Prince shared his perspective on what on his take on it, and he said that he's looking forward to it. I'm curious to hear about your take, but before we get there, we'll build up to it. My question for you now, as you've explained the BRICS, I'm curious, what will it take for Ghana to join the BRICS?
Oh, I think a number of nations have actually applied to join, including Nigeria, Tanzania, Angola, and many other nations from the continent. So if Ghana wants to join, I think it's about applying, and then they'll consider and then admit you. In fact, they've established a new development bank for the BRIC region, and Egypt is actually part of that bank.
Yeah, Prince, we can hear you. Can you hear Courage?
No, I can't hear Courage.
Oh, wow.
But could you hear me, Elikem?
Yeah, Courage, I could hear you loud and clear. Okay, let's just do a quick check with our audience. If anyone in the audience can hear Courage, use the thumbs up reaction so that we see some activity to confirm. Adam, I know you may not be able to speak, but can you just use a reaction to let us know if you can hear? Okay, I'm seeing some messages. Paulina can hear Courage.
Okay.
Okay, Courage, please speak up and let's see if Grace
Oh,
will hear
all right.
you
So
again.
all I'm saying is that there are a number of nations have applied now to join BRICS. A number of them all across the globe, really. And so all it would take Ghana is to also apply. They will be considered on its merit, and then, of course, an admission is made or otherwise.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. But I just hope I hope if it's a good thing, it will happen in our lifetime. Because this are Ghana dear. Anyway, all right, let's get into the matter. So what's this whole issue about? Or first tell us what's the BRICS say? Like what's their contention?
Okay. We all know that there is a history to why the US dollar is actually the world's reserve currency. It started in 1944. What we call the Bretton Woods arrangement or Bretton Woods regime. Bretton Woods is a town in the US, actually. Some 44 nations, about 174 people in total met there sometime in 1994, I think July, for a 22-day conference. And it was that was the same period the Second World War was going. So they were devising strategies to rebuild the global economy after the Second World War, and they were forming a monetary regime that would actually govern the operations and all of that. So it was that conference that actually birthed the IMF and then the World Bank. At the end of the conference, they had actually agreed to a monetary framework with which to operate, and the objectives were broadly three: to ensure currency stability, among others, then reduce imbalance of payment vulnerabilities, among other objectives, really. And so that was how those institutions came up. And at the time, US held about 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. And so they forcefully argued that the reserve currency should be the US dollar. And at the time, the US dollar was pegged to gold. I think you would need $35 at the time to get 1 ounce of gold. And every other member's currency is pegged to the US dollar, and it rotates within a band of just 1%, really. So that was what happened from there. And that is how the dollar became the world's reserve currency. So almost every nation accumulates reserves in dollars and things like that. Fast forward to 71, I think the US had a lot of balance of payment problems, which meant that there was so much dollars outside the US than there are in the US. And they are unable to now maintain the dollar as the reserve currency. So I think they denounced at that point in time that peg, or the peg between the dollar and then the gold, really. And so from 71, the dollar just became a fiat, and a fiat is just paper money that has no intrinsic value or nothing backing it. So the dollar became a fiat, and it has no gold backing it again. But then, because it became the world's reserve currency, it continued all through. And we are in a period now where the dollar is being used as a weapon. It is being weaponized. Any nation that stands against the West or tries to do something that the West, US and then the likes consider not favorable, they impose economic sanctions. Or you can talk about Iran, you can talk about Russia recently, and a number of other such developments, really. And so for developing economies, you do not have the leverage to do things you feel would advance your economy. And no one is supporting Russia's war. But you realize that beyond this war, there has been instances where if you get into an issue with the US or any of the global superpowers, the economic sanctions will follow. And in Russia's case now, they said do not buy Russia's oil. And they have decided to retaliate to say that you need my oil, but we are not accepting the dollar. We would accept yuan, we would accept our own currency and the likes, but not the dollar. So they were even accepting rupee and things like that, the rubles and the others, but not US dollar, as a way of retaliating. And I guess the idea of a new reserve currency probably may be coming from years of experience and how US has used the dollar and the West has used the dollar as a weapon against most of these other developing countries, really. I think that is where the idea is coming from, to develop a currency of our own, trade amongst ourselves, and win our dependence on the dollar. In that sense, you have no reason to sanction us again, and then we may be able to pursue our development agenda the way we want it. I think that is where the idea is coming from.
Okay, that's interesting. They're fighting back against it. Currency is an issue that can be weaponized, so it's good to see this. That there's some questioning of the status quo going on. Courage, how likely do you think it is that the US dollar can be changed or removed from its status as the global trading currency? And if it's likely, what could replace it? A new thing or just a different country's currency?
I'm not sure the goal is even to replace the dollar. It's to make it lose its relevance, because the dollar will remain a dollar and every other currency will be so. But I think what the BRIC region is trying to do is this. And by the way, the BRIC bloc is very big and they are influential, even if it's just 5 nations. As it stands now with the 5 nations, they have 41% of the world's population, about 3.14 billion people. That's a huge market. And they have a combined surface area of about 23.9% of the world's total land area, really. And they command about 24% of the world GDP and control about 16% of the global trade. So they are an influential bloc, even if they are 4. And China, India, as we know it, holds the world's largest population. And of course, Brazil and the others are also coming up and trying to industrialize and stuff like that. So they are influential. And the thing about them now is that there has been a myriad of applications to join them. In Africa, you can talk of Nigeria, you can talk of Egypt, you can talk of Tanzania, you can talk of I think Algeria and most of those petroleum producing countries. There is even the Arabian countries, Saudis and the likes, Turkey, and from South America and all across the globe. There are a number of countries, about 24 of them or so applying now. Now, the interesting thing as it stands is now Mexico, which is a close ally of the US, is actually applying and they've actually put in an application to join BRIC. And there are rumors that even Japan, which is part of G7, is actually planning or contemplating joining the BRIC. And as we speak, it appears BRIC has overtaken G7 in terms of their contribution to global GDP and stuff like that. So it tells you if they want to push this through, they really can. But how will they do it different? The US dollar is a fiat, and that is what everybody is speaking against. I mean, that is just one other paper like every other country's currency. So there is nothing very superior about it, really. What the BRIC is trying to do this time around is that let us back our currency with some natural resources like gold, like oil, like commodities, really, that have value, like your silvers and stuff. And if you see the nations that they are considering or applying, almost all of them are resource-based nations. And so if all of them are backing or committing their resources to back this currency, then it doesn't become like a fiat currency, but a commodity-backed currency that has more value, intrinsic value than the dollar and most of these other fiat currencies, really. And so that is where it would derive its power from. But it becomes another reserve currency, and based on the volumes of trade, dynamic directions of trade, you can be comfortable keeping that particular currency or keeping the dollar. It becomes now a preference based on your interest, rather than just be limited to one option of a dollar, really. I think that is what they are seeking to achieve. Will it be one country's currency? I think the plan, after I've read it in the rumor, is that they intend to start with the yuan or the renminbi, really, the Chinese currency, and then over time transition into a new currency that represents the bloc. And so those are the things in the grapevine, but nothing concrete yet to lay a hand on. And I think that it will be a better approach to adopt a new currency altogether. Because much as you would have issues about the USD, people also have issues with the renminbi and all of that. And it's about universal acceptability if it comes to currency, really. And so if we can develop a currency now that is properly backed by commodities, and it's not just another fiat, really, it would actually get attention much more than using the yuan. But it could be a starting point, because yuan is, if you like, China is arguably one of the, it's the top 2 nation officially now in terms of size. It could overtake the US in a few years, maybe 3-4 years from now. It could overtake US and all of that. So they are a big nation, they are a superpower. They could start with their currency, but I believe a stable one could mean a new currency properly backed by commodities. And that is where I guess the plan is headed.
That's interesting. So it can happen if they do the things that they need to do right. Courage.
Definitely.
I was hearing, following this on the various news channels. I heard snippets from the Brazilian president, and it sounded like the reasons he was giving was more about political reasons, and trying to engage people's sentiments and all that. Do you think such a drive would make sense both economically and politically, or is it just pure sentiment? In other words, as an economist, if it were up to you, what do you think should be done?
It is political. In fact, that is the whole end game, really. Russia, China, they've been playing the politics game. And let me take you back a bit. You realize that China is now even lending to developing economies much more than the World Bank, which is meant to lend to developing countries and support them to grow, really. And it's all part of the strategy to increase their relevance, increase their trade with these developing economies, get natural resources flowing, and entrench their position as a superpower. And I think pretty much that is what the agenda has been. They are the biggest nation in that bloc, really. So it's very much political, as much as it is economic. And so what they are trying to do is now weaken demand for the US dollar and then make it maybe one other ordinary currency, while they increase the appeal of whatever they plan to create. How do I think about this? To the extent that I feel the global financial architecture, as we've all known it, is not suitable for developing countries. We are in an era where, yes, I understand our fiscal slippages are very pronounced. Our debt affordability metrics and all of that are way pronounced. And the discipline, even from internally, corruption and things like that, are weighing down sentiment and all of that. But then, if you have a country with the same rating from Fitch, and it is in Africa and another is maybe in Europe, chances are you go to the bond market and the one in Europe will borrow much less, at much lesser rate than the one in Africa or any of those other developing zones, really. And the difference most likely is where you are coming from. So the architecture is not great. And for developing countries, if you really want to develop, then you need to start looking at radical ways of financing your growth. And if you have China as a partner willing to lend, and India could, in maybe 10, 20 years' time, maybe move from where they are now, about the 6th largest economy, to probably about the 3rd or so economy in the world, really. And they are really at that. And you could see the likes of Russia also scale up if they progress along those paths, really. So you are having increasingly your colleague who is a developing economy, but they are becoming increasingly powerful. I think the best thing is to align with them and foster a common developmental goal that can take all of you out of your seeming poverty into maybe some light, really. And that is why I'll reason with them on this trajectory. And by the way, if the gold standard has lost its essence all this while, why has the US dollar maintained its power and every currency is valued against them and all of that. And so I feel it's actually prudent that they do this. But in doing this, like I mentioned earlier, we should make sure that we do not just duplicate what we have with the euro, what we have with the pound, what we have with the USD and then the yen to a large extent. We should have a currency that is credible because one, you will not necessarily have the world power seat or maybe just sit down quietly and watch you do this. They would retaliate. But what will make it universally appealing will be when you back this currency with sound macro policies within the regions that you are developing, and of course back it with commodities that gives this currency some stability. You do not want to develop a currency that is very volatile. For a large extent, South Africa as a member of that bloc is still a nation that doesn't have stability even in currency front. You see what is happening in South Africa in particular, the energy challenges, the growth challenges, the corruption issues, and things related, they are not ones that speak of stability. And it's a reason why the South African rand is particularly a volatile currency. You want to deal with those issues, and with members, you even admit going forward, you want to ensure that there is some sense of economic stability, discipline in those countries, and then you can pull together their natural resources as a collateral, or if you like, something backing this currency and give it credibility. If we do it and do it right, then its acceptability becomes universal. Then it can actually wrestle with the USD and the other established reserve currencies and probably achieve the goal it's meant to achieve. And so we need to hasten with caution and not just be in the spirit of politics or fighting back, create something that will not have a sense. But I'm assured that China is a tactical player in this whole game. So as maybe the many other nations, they are not just playing it. They know exactly what they are doing and what they want to achieve. And that is why they are creating the allies they are creating, really. So the hope is that we would have a reserve currency that can compete with the USD in a few years' time to come.
Okay, Courage. That's good to know. We should not repeat the same mistakes that have gotten us to this point as we create a new one. So I would like to pivot the conversation to how all this matters to us. People, big companies, big countries are going at it, and we know, of course, the saying is that when elephants fight, it is the grass that suffers. Or have I gotten the saying wrong? Our older ones can correct me, Paulina and Prince and Co. But yeah, so we are the grass. How we will need to discuss the implications for us. But before we do that, just a quick question. Instead of all this drama that we are here complaining about the US dollar, these countries are trade among each other. Why can't they just agree that, okay, when Brazil is selling, is it cocoa beans? When Brazil is selling cocoa or timber to China, they should just agree on whatever currency they are going to do it in. And then just do that. Why stress and go through the dollar?
Now, I think the starting point even for the BRIC now is I think it's part of the discussions, how they can trade among themselves using their own currencies. So if I'm exporting to say Russia, assuming I'm a member of BRIC and I'm exporting to Russia, I don't expect to be paid dollars. I can receive the Russian currency, and same if Russia is exporting to Ghana, they receive the Ghana cedi really. If we are able to trade amongst ourselves, accepting our own currencies, then we would have been making steps towards developing something meaningful. In the first place, we would have been solving a balance of payment problem, because I would not need to go and find US dollars anywhere to pay you. I can just simply print more cedis, and then I'll be able to trade with you and get what I want. It takes away the pressure of depreciation. It takes away the pressure of volatility and everything associated with it. Then if you start from there, you can now journey towards developing a currency that is common to all of you. So will it be a common market? Will it just be a reserve currency being created? Or what? All those are modalities they are discussing, and will come up with the appropriate one that works really. But what you just said is part of the discussions. trading with amongst ourselves with our own currencies is among the discussions they are having among the with the BRIC bloc.
Okay, great. That should be a starting point there. All right, so Courage, we in Ghana we deal with the Ghanaian cedi. Please, how does this all concern us? I said somebody will say, "Waiting concern we." Why should we be bothered?
And of course, the CD doesn't depreciate against the naira as much as it depreciates against the dollar, and you can, by extension, argue that for many other currencies. Really, it's about demand supply, and it's about what the world is willing to accept. So, and Ghana, I believe at this point has a lot of trade with China, at least on the import side, and the export side also, I believe there is quite a volume. We have to look at the real numbers to see which are our top 3, top 5 export destinations, really. But I believe China will feature in there. And so if there is an alternative currency that you trade a lot more in, and you can actually generate a lot more there in reserves, you do not necessarily have to go for the dollar that is you have limited supply of, and you get dollar from your trades and your trades with certain countries. If you go to maybe Netherlands or places like that, chances that you will get euros. If you go to the UK, chances that you get pounds. But to other countries, probably every other country else, probably it is the dollar, because those are the universally accepted currencies. But what if now the South African rand, the Indian rupee, and the Russian, is it ruble or whatever it's called, and the others can all now come together and form one currency that can be universally acceptable now? It means that when I'm trading with South Africa, when I'm trading with India, when I'm trading with Russia or any other country like that, I can simply just give them that universally acceptable currency. So not everyone now has to go chasing the USD. We can have alternatives, and that will mean the pressure on the dollar will reduce, and you can begin to see demand going towards other currencies because it's universally acceptable now. And that is where it will benefit us. Once the pressure on dollar demand is reducing, it will mean that you would have a lot more stable currency, and that is good for us going forward. Should we decide at some point we want to join the BRIC bloc also, then we actually benefit from it even more fully. But even without participating in BRIC, if that goes through and that becomes a currency that is universally acceptable and becomes one of the reserve currencies that we can be comfortably trade in, then what it does is it reduces the pressure you would see going to the dollar and then the euro and the likes. And then you begin to see more stability on the currency front.
Oh, that's interesting. So there's some potential that we will come out of this in a good situation. I guess we can tell our bishop that he should now start. He should guide his prayer topics. That's some positive light for this one. He needs to organize some serious fasting towards such a thing. It should come, and it should come very soon, because what the city is starting to do again, people don't like it. Okay, all right, that's good. In terms of our money values, and Mimi and Serum are not available, but I'm just curious in terms of investments that people have. You know, some people have bought the US dollar, some people have bought US dollar denominated assets, whether it's US stocks or bonds or cryptocurrencies that are denominated in the US dollar, or they've just bought dollar cash. They are just holding on to the dollar cash either in their accounts or under their pillows or beds. Should they be concerned? Should they now say that, well, it's possible that the dollar may lose some value, so they want to convert back, or is it too early to determine?
I think it's not an immediate problem. Yes, the talk of another reserve currency, but the US dollar will not lose its value overnight because there is another currency being contemplated, really. And from the even approach they are developing now, if they decide to adopt the renminbi for a start, the renminbi already exists, really. Yes, it will mean increased demand for that, but that will not drastically reduce the appeal of the dollar. So it's something that could come over time. And I believe as investors, our sure way of earning is to observe the markets, right? And pick up the trends. And so as we follow the news, as we watch the numbers every day, we will know when to strike, and then we can strike. But at this point in time, I don't think there is a cause for alarm at all.
Okay, so the message is keep calm. Keep calm. All right. Courage, you mentioned something that just got me thinking. This will help with people's information. The renminbi, that's the Chinese currency, and I've also heard about the yen. Is it the yuan? Yes, the yuan. What's the difference between the renminbi and the yuan?
Okay, so I think largely it's the same thing. They call it different names. Really, I'm not sure about the history, but I think they have had to change their currency at some point. And so yuan and renminbi, let me not misinform, but I think as we speak now, it's the same thing. It's a choice of word, whether to call it yuan or renminbi. It's really the same thing. And the Japanese one is yen. So they are close and the symbols are very identical. But then yuan, renminbi are the same things. I chose to call it renminbi because I normally confuse myself between yen and yuan.
Okay. It's like the R&L problem. Yeah, I get you.
Not about the R&L. I struggle to remember which one is for which country. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I get you.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. Some information for our audience. All right. So that covers the implications for us as Ghanaians. In summary, potentially lower volatility for the cedi's currency, the cedis against the dollar. There'll be less pressure on the dollar, so we can expect some stability for the cedi. We can also expect, and with that stability comes lower inflation that comes from the FX side. So it's something that is potentially good for us. Courage, we were speaking of the implications, you mentioned that we may get even more benefits if Ghana chooses to join the BRICS fully. I'm curious, there are all these associations in supranational organizations, various blocks, all these organizations. Do we really benefit by joining so many of them?
You can't say no. As it stands now, we are not part of G20. We are not part of G7. We are not part of BRIC and all of that.
I'm sorry. Calm down. Are you trying to laugh at us or something? This one we know is common knowledge. We are not G20.
I'm not. The point I'm saying is that we are not part of these, but we all know who Ghana is an ally of. We are allies to the US, we are allies to the UK, and largely the West. And so we realize that whenever there is a geopolitical issue and the US has taken a stance, you will realize that Ghana would yield to that stance also. And a few others would take different stance. You realize that Russia still trades with countries like South Africa, countries like China, and because they are allies and they belong to the BRIC bloc. Yeah, but Ghana has adopted the position of the US and the others. But that's because our survival depends on them. For instance, we are trying to get a 3 billion loan from IMF. IMF is American-funded institution, really. Largely so. A World Bank, same. The UN, same. And stuff like that. So you do not want to destroy where your bread comes from, really. And when you are in trouble, where it comes from, you do not want to destroy it. And that is why it appears, even if we are not part of them, we seem to side with some of the global powers, really. Would there be benefits? If we join, of course, then you get the full benefits of being a member. For instance, if you are a member of ECOWAS, then there are benefits that accrue to you, including moving freely across without showing passports, trading across without limitations and things like that. Or if you are part of the AFTA region, you are able to export across, so long as the origin of the good is your local economy, you are able to export it without tariffs and stuff like that. So there are those benefits for members of those blocks. But as it stands, we've not belonged to any of them, but we have shown affinity to some blocks for reasons we all know. Our bread and butter comes from them, so we've shown some affinity to them.
Okay, that's cool. At least that's good to know. But if we can still get some value from that, it's okay, because I can imagine we pay dues for these things, and we even if we don't pay dues, we have our politicians and our technocrats flying over there, going on so that working vacations for these meetings. So at least, in fact, that's a nice way to polish it. Working vacations. I like that. Quote me on that. Anyway, so Courage, that's been a good conversation as always. You know, you've taught us well. I was concerned that today's conversation may be very technical, but I hope some of our audience have walked away with some understanding from the origins of the Bretton Woods, how the US became the standard, and all that, to why there's a push for a new standard. The last question I'll leave you with, and this is probably for my own humor. While we are on the topic of currencies and people changing currencies and all that, so the echo that they were talking about, what's up with that? They've been talking about this echo since I was in primary school.
Yes. It's been forever.
A single currency for the ECOWAS sub-region.
It's been forever.
Or is it opportunity for working vacations? Anyway, you tell me, what do you think?
My thought is this, and it's been the issue. You see, the basic requirement for a currency to be useful is when it is stable. If you create a currency that is very volatile, then you might as well stick with your national currency. So the ECOWAS region actually developed what they call the ECOWAS convergence criteria. And it's just criteria that every country must meet for them to usher in the common currency. In there, you have a certain deficit target, budget deficit target you must run each year, a primary balance you must run each year, an inflation target, and a number of other indicators. But the reality is that no country in the region is committed to meeting those targets. So you've seen, in particular, maybe you must get a debt to GDP ratio of, I think, if I remember right, about 3%. Fiscal deficit should be about 3% of your GDP by a certain timeline. And you needed to run that for 3 or 4 consecutive years to say you've entrenched it. You would see one country achieve it maybe this year, and next year they mess it up significantly, and then they go back on the process of consolidating to regain that. And it has been the story of the region. So the conditions that would support a stable currency we haven't achieved, and rolling out a currency which is basically just printing money will not achieve the purpose, because the fundamentals that would anchor its stability are just not in place. And that is the story of the region in simple terms. And that's why it's been on the works or on the table forever, but never really achieves its objective.
Oh, okay. So it's true that currency is one thing, and it's more like the end process of countries and economies getting their stuff in order. All right.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Well, I wish we could get our stuff in order, but I'm not looking forward to that currency.
And by the way, I have an opinion on that. By the way, what is the volume of trade between us ECOWAS countries really? Is it that significant to warrant a currency? Because what would be the point if we have a common currency but we don't trade much amongst ourselves? Do we not have very similar things? If you go to Ivory Coast, they are producing oil, they are producing cocoa, and most agricultural products, and some other minerals. You come to Ghana, the story is not different. You go to Nigeria, they do some cocoa, they do a lot of oil, they do gas and agricultural product and many others. You go to Niger and Togo and the likes. I'm not sure they are too different from us. And so, justifiably so, because we do not also add a lot of value to our product across the ECOWAS region, really, there are no intermediate, or there are very limited intermediate exports between those countries, let alone finished goods. So I keep asking myself, what is the volume and value of trade between these nations to warrant even a common currency? Because then you create a currency, but you go about importing from and trading with other countries who need the things you produce or who have the things you need. And then it becomes much ado about nothing, really. So I'm even questioning the need for an eco and whether it is very relevant at all, unless we are prepared to trade more amongst ourselves and do a lot more between ourselves, really. I don't see it value. But that is my personal opinion about this. Maybe I don't know what they know.
Courage. My personal opinion is very much aligned with yours. So we'll leave it to the... We hope that as we have these conversations, more people in the public will start to understand these things. And then if ever it will really come into fruition, there'll be sufficient public discussion before it's executed, because it's such an important issue. Okay.
Definitely.
Thank you once again, Courage. Today we've had this conversation about the BRICS, that is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, having conversations about a different currency other than the US serving as the global trading standard. It's been a very enlightening conversation, and I hope we've improved our knowledge about economics. And I think that the takeaway for personal finance and investments is it's still early days yet. No need to rush to make any moves, so that change your money from one currency to another or change your investment from one currency to another. Yeah. So thank you for joining us this midweek. I hear that there are some Champions League matches going on, so I hope you enjoy yours, whichever you are watching. Enjoy the rest of the weekend. I hope to catch you next week. Follow us here on Twitter, on Instagram, on Facebook. Replay our conversations on Twitter, on wherever you listen to your podcast, on YouTube, and also when you get on Instagram, follow Investment Friend. That's at investment_friend for personal finance coaching. We speak a lot generally on money convos, but it's good to talk to a financial advisor who can think about your individual and unique circumstances to give you assistance on what decisions you should be making. All right. Hopefully we can have a conversation next week about the Hakimi style. If anyone knows any lawyers who do a lot on family affairs and divorce, please do forward their contacts so that we can engage them to have this conversation. All right then. Do take care. Have a good night. Talk to you next week. Bye.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our thoughts. I hope you learned a thing or two and start practicing. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Clubhouse, and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube and podcast. Do tell a friend about Money Convos so we all become wealthy together. Talk to you soon. Bye.